Today we're gonna code lots with Mr. Kim Philpotts, and oh how amazing you'll be.
right. Well, good morning and happy Friday for those of you, at least in Australia, for maybe a Thursday night for other people. Welcome back. It's Friday. That means we're going to continue our Xamarin UI challenge. So let's have a look at what we're going to do today. And first of all, a big hello to the chat, of course. So Dragon, you've got hot reload. Fantastic. So that's really awesome. I think it's coming along very nicely, actually. So I find it works really, really well. So awesome. All right, and welcome to anyone else on the chat. I think we got a few people on. So say hi, and let's talk about what we're going to do today. So we're going to continue on with our Marvel. Hey, Tiru, or Tirau. Hello, hello. And Dragon said, works amazing on Android. You have to try to get it working on iOS. Yeah, I've had it working on iOS. I still have a little bit of trouble with iOS on my environment, but generally it works pretty well. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to do today. We're continuing on with this little design that we have, Marvel Movies Interaction. Let me just post out a couple of links here. So we worked on this last week. We have it in the GitHub repo here, and the link to the actual dribble that we're replicating is right here. Okay, so it's a pretty cool UI. Not terribly complicated except for all of the animations that go on, which is what we're going to sort of focus on. Right, so is that hot reload out of preview? No, I think it's still in private preview. Tirau. Let me know if I'm saying that correctly. So I think it's still in private, but you can apply to join the private preview and you should get access to it. But it seems pretty solid so far. Yeah, Dragon, it's still in private preview. So I don't know a release date for it, but you can certainly start using it and it works really, really nicely. Okay, so what have we got? We've got our Marvel cards here. Let's have a look at where we got up to last week. So I've got it running here. Okay, so here's our Marvel card. We've got Spider-Man. We can swipe across and we do these animations as we swipe. So we reduce the size of the first card and adjust the opacity of it as it goes across. And our second card sort of expands out there. So we got the basics of that card. There's a few things that I did change whilst in between streams. So one of those things is I actually changed this background from being just a box view, and I changed that across to actually using a Skia backend. The reason for that is because we're going to have to do a lot of animations with it. So we're going to have to take control of that a little bit more than what we can do with a box view. All right, so that's sort of our starting point here. If we go and have a look at a video of this, let me bring this over here. And let's have a look at some of the elements here. So the first thing I'd like to do is at the moment, let me just pause that. At the moment, we are sort of, when we're displaying our card here. Good morning, Lachlan. Welcome. We've got these corners down here that I don't like. Okay, but we do need the bottom corners because if you have a look at what the animation does, it actually does have bottom corners in it. You see when it swipes across here, we can see this bottom rounded corner. So we need that rounded corner, but I think we just need it to appear off the bottom of the screen. The other thing I want to tackle off sort of straight away is when the user actually goes and selects the card or starts swiping, you notice it sort of scales in a little bit. Okay, so let's tackle that first of all. And then we'll get on to this sort of expansion that we have here in this gradient that goes across here and sort of start popping in some of those. Yeah, so it could be, yeah, but I just, Lachlan, thought they were only there because the phone had rounded corners. Yeah, but it turns out it does actually have rounded corners. It's just a little bit below the screen. Okay, cool. So let's tackle that one first of all. That shouldn't be too bad. Of course, that's famous last words. The real world leaks into the animations. Yeah, it's always a little bit tough, Lachlan, when you sort of take one of these designs, because you only really see it in one resolution or one form factor. So for example, on my Android here that I'm running this on, it's got a much smaller, wider screen. And so you're going to kind of just make some allowances. But really what I try and do with these UI challenges is just get it mostly right and just sort of play around with some techniques that we could use to replicate it. Okay, cool. So let's start off with this. Now, one thing that I have done is I've changed the way that my screens are laid out, my physical screens that I have on my machine here. So I'm actually sort of broadcasting. Let me see if my back camera here works. Yeah. So what I have now is I've got my main screen in the middle here. And so I'm actually just broadcasting this part of the screen. So let me know if I'm talking about something that you can't see. So do that for me. Mac on the left. Mac's always on. Well, actually, it's on my right. Here's my Mac. There's my camera up there. This one here, I just sort of. Tira, yeah, it's a mirror image. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, so this screen here, I just keep my stream information on, so you can see me pointing at myself here. Over here, I've got some other stream information, and this is basically where I'm working. So a little bit of a change. So hopefully it works, and my microphone keeps on falling down. So if you see me adjusting that, that's why. Okay, cool. Let's come back over here. Let's try and get some of those little details around the bottom. Tira, you just amazed the amount of detail I put into it. I'd stop it. It looks good. Yeah, I think for a lot of this stuff, it's actually the details that make the difference. Like if this has a square bottom on it, or it has these rounded corners, it looks a little bit naff. So yeah, so there we go. All right, cool. Let's get that out of the way. Let's stop this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm actually going to adjust where that card sits, I think. So I'm going to, so at the moment, I've got my card here. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply a bit of a margin to it. So I'm going to make it actually a little bit longer than the screen. So I can do that by giving it a negative margin, right? So if I say 0, 0, left 0, top 0, bottom minus 30, sorry, right 0, bottom minus 30, it should now appear actually off the bottom of the screen. So let's have a look at that. See if it's going to work for me. Fortunately, deployments to Android are working reasonably fast. I'd say, as it takes a long time. Okay, cool. So that's off the bottom of the screen now. Okay, but it's actually still got it in there. So hopefully, if I swing this out, you can see that rounded corner down there. Okay, cool. So that's a little bit nicer. It's a little bit more like what our original design would be like. Cool. So that's, yeah, that's good. All right. Now let's deal with the next bit, which is when the user starts swiping, we want to bring the card in a little bit. Okay, so for this, what I'm going to do is go into, let's just stop this. Go into our code here. Now, unfortunately, I don't have hot code reloading, so I'm going to stop it when I do some code changes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and basically, actually not into the view model. I want to go into my main page here. And we'll basically say when the running animation, so when the running of the card view is going, I want to basically say, if they're starting to swipe, then let's bring it in, right? And the reason I want to say if it's starting to swipe is because we also have the interaction when the user clicks on something. So we don't want to, if they just tap on the card and don't move, we don't want it to adjust the scale. So let's do this. Here's my microphone falling down again. Okay, so let's put in adjust scale when panning. Okay, so I'll just basically say if our percent from center, which is what we calculate about, how far that they're actually swiping, if it's greater than 0, then and our scale is currently set to 1. Right, so our card scale. Okay, so card is the frontmost card. So if our card scale is equal to 1, then let's just go ahead and do a scale to something reasonable. So I don't know, 0.95 or something like that. So we'll just scale it in a little bit. We'll do it over, I don't know, 50 milliseconds, something like that. And when the user lets go of the card, okay, or when they stop swiping, we probably want to go ahead and we want to scale that back out again, right? So let's say card.scale to scale it back to 1 over 50 milliseconds, something like that. So let's see if that's working for us. Question there. Are you using a library for your cards and their events, or did I roll my own? I'm actually using a really, really cool library for that. Okay, let's have a look at this first of all, and then I'll show you the library that we're using. Okay, so if I just click on it, it's doing nothing. If I start to move, it sort of comes in a little bit. And if I let it go, it should scale back. There we are. So there we are. That's probably what we're after. Now, again, the reason why I didn't just sort of scale it when we start moving is because we actually want to be able to click on this learn more in order to do our expansion a little bit later on. So that's why I actually put that little check in to say, are we actually moving? And if we are, let's bring it in. Cool. So that's looking pretty good, I think. Okay, so we can start to focus now on some of the other elements. But first of all, that question, Dragon, am I using a library? Yes, I am using a library. Let's bring up which one that is. That's, let me see if I can find it. It's, in fact, let's do this. Can we come into here? Cards view. Is that actually going to tell us what it is? Pan card view. Let's just do a search on that. There we are. This is the one here. So this is actually a really, really cool library. It exposes lots of good events out of there as well. It's also very flexible. So you can do this for, obviously I'm using the cards view here, which is how I'm getting that swiping going on. Does carousels, does cover flow, and does cube view. I'm not sure about the cube view, but I'm sure if you need a cube view, this is great for you. So this is really cool. It supports things like custom animations as well. I'm actually not using those. I should probably have a look at those. But this is pretty much my go-to if I'm going to have cards. Lots of really, really great events in here. And Andre, I think it's Andre, does really, really cool controls as well. So shout out to Andre. Yeah, he does expandable views and touch effects and, all sorts of good stuff in there. All right. Hey, let's put some music on, shall we? Not too loud. How's that? Okie dokie. Cool. So what's next? Okay, so if we look at our design, the next bit that we probably want to have a look at is putting this text up the top here. This is between the no more. When we click on no more, as you see here, that's the trigger for it to start expanding. And when the user clicks the back arrow, that's when it's going to collapse sort of back down as well. And you notice that there is a little bit of text, movies up the top, which is going to go and move out of the top of the screen. Whoop, like so. All right, so let's put that in first of all. We can probably do this while we're running, I suspect, with a bit of hot reload. Now, that text isn't in the card because we don't want it to appear for every card, so it's actually going to be in our main page XAML inside of there. So let's go ahead and throw, we've got a grid as our container. Let's go and throw a label in here. We're going to want to respond to it, so we'll give it a name, something appropriate like movies header. Okay, let's just bring up our reload here. I'm going to put this over here. I realized last stream that I actually had it over here, so my head was in front of the simulator the whole time. Okay, so we've got our movies header. Let's bring that in by 20. Set our horizontal options to center. Let's give it some text as well. Our text equals, what does it say? It says movies. All right, there it is. A little bit small. We'll probably want to apply a style to that. So let's go and do exactly that. Let's get a style. Let's create a style. First of all, let me bring that back in. Just getting used to my new screen layout. Okie dokie. So let's pull that out of the way here for a moment. We've got a header. We've got a subheader. It's probably going to be quite similar, I think, to the subheader. Let's call this our, perhaps our title bar. Maybe title header would be better. Okay, so it's got a font family of header font, size 24. Let's just go and apply that and then see how it looks. Oh, that's not going to take because I haven't saved my XAML. Title header, you there? It's not there. Title header label, it's white. Yeah, it totally works. Totally works on your app XAML. Yeah. So if I wanted to change this, I'm not sure. I think let's have a quick look at that. It's a lighter font and probably a little bit bigger. So let's give that the body font. So yeah, it's really nice. I can just change it here and it updates there. So yeah, works on app XAML. How's that looking? It's probably a little bit, just pop it up a little bit. 26, sure. All right, let's give it a back arrow as well. So we've got an image. We've already brought the image in actually. So we'll have this as a source equal to, I think it's called back arrow. Oh yeah, there's that back arrow. A little big, let's sort of adjust that. Ship it, it's ready. I think we want to, excuse me, tell it not to fill. So let's say our horizontal options will make it start. Our vertical options, let's make it start as well. There we are. That's all right. It's sort of up there in the top corner. Obviously we want some margins in this as well. So I think 40 in from the side is what we have here. Let's bring it 30 down. Let's just see how it looks. Yeah, it's not bad. That's not bad. It's probably about right. Let's sort of come back here and have a look at this. Yeah, it's not too bad. Beautiful. We're going to give this a name as well. I'm not sure what Hot Reload does with when we assign a name. Oh, well, let's find out. So we'll give this a name like back arrow. Beautiful. Right, cool. Now, what else do we need? So that gives us our things that we need to respond to. I suppose the next step now is getting the card to expand. So we'll start off with just the simple thing. We'll basically, when they click on it, we'll animate the card up, the movies out, and then that text up. Let's focus on that and then that transition across there. And then we can load in this detail here. One of the questions I do have, and this is again where it becomes difficult when you just look at a design like this, trying to work out how it should actually work. Like for example, here they have something like a collection view down the bottom. So what should we do here when this comes up? Because we'll run out of space. And the challenge is if this collection view is sort of a grid that goes down, then that's going to have a scroll on it, but then we probably also want to scroll here. So it could well be that we either adjust our design and just make it sort of basically so that this bottom section is scrollable, or maybe as we scroll up, we should, reduce font sizes and reduce the image size. So we'll give that a go. Let me turn my Mac off, which is making beepy noises at me. Beautiful. All right. So step one, card expansion. Okie dokie. So actually here's a challenge with the card expansion. There's sort of two parts to it, right? So we've got the card view, which is this bit here. And when we click the no more, we want it to expand and it needs to notify the root page because this here is going to scroll up out of the way. But likewise, when we tap on something that's in the main view, we want to tell the card to collapse as well. So we're going to have some communication between those two. So Dragon, you say you could make a grid with 2 columns and n rows and make the text under the horizontal bar scrollable. Yeah, that's definitely an option that we could do. We still do have the challenge though of if this has a vertical scroll. I suppose it doesn't have to have a vertical scroll. It could actually, just be part of the scroll view as well. So yeah, we'll tackle that one a little bit later on. I'll be happy today if we can get this gradient going and we can get this pop-up going. Small steps, but yeah, that's definitely a possible solution. Hey, anime lover. Was data structures your hardest course at college? Yeah, well, we call it university here in Australia. What was my hardest course? Probably not data structures, although that was a challenging one. Probably for me because I'm not really into electrical engineering. It was probably more about getting all the AND gates and things like that going. But yeah, data structures is actually a super important class. So anime lover, are you doing a course on data structures at the moment? Do I think the courses are hard if you don't go to class? Yes, I suspect it will be harder if you don't go to the class. I think it'll be even harder if you don't do the assignments. So I'm personally somebody who learns by just doing things and trying them and failing. So the more you can actually write, or for me anyway, the more I can write code, the more likely I am to actually remember it. All right, cool. Lachlan, you didn't have a proper data structure subject in your degree. Interesting. Lachlan, did you do computer science or? I love it. There is a good correlation between people passing and showing up. You didn't do, so Lachlan, you did a Bachelor of IT. Why about Dragon? You didn't do either. Associate in CS. Yeah, a lot of really, really awesome developers don't actually have computer science degrees. I don't think it's a requirement. I think passion is the main determining factor on whether you are successful as a programmer. Google does teach you a lot. I know that there's some good classes on Pluralsight, for example, on data structures. Yeah. Hey, Matt Goldman, you did philosophy of science. Wow. You know, I actually wish, so when I did my degree, I did a degree in computer science, and we could major and double major in things. And so I double majored in computing because I was such a nerd. But I actually wish I took other classes outside of IT. That would have been useful. So I always respect people who do other things outside of just pure IT. Yeah, Dragon, you say college taught you how to teach yourself. I think that's one of the key things you learn, right? Is how to learn. An anime lover agrees and says, I learn by just doing everything. Yeah, it's a great way to learn. Okay. Ooh. I think the other thing as well that would make a big difference is actually sort of finishing projects. I'm not great at finishing projects, so that would make a big difference. And just putting code in GitHub. So when I did my degree, which was a long time ago, there wasn't anything like GitHub. But I reckon sort of committing lots of code to GitHub or contributing to open source is an awesome way of learning. Anime lover. College teaches you the importance of showing up, how to learn, respecting others. Couldn't have guessed that as organized you appear in the streams. Yeah, I try and look organized. I'm not always so organized in my real world. All right, cool. So let's talk about expanding this card. All right. So the communication between these, now, I should just run that again. The communication between these two, I want to be careful not to create a hard reference between the card and the parent, right? And create this like cyclical reference, because there's actually multiple card instances happening, right? So for example, when we have a look here, we've got this main card, but there's also that secondary card behind, right? So there's two hero cards going on here. And I don't really want to give them a hard reference to the parent because that's where you tend to end up with sort of memory leaks and things like that. So I think instead what I'll do is I'll basically just sort of send a message when the user taps on this, and that will be an indicator for the parent will listen for that message. And when it gets that message, it can then sort of put that out of the way, scroll up. And likewise, when they hit the back button, I can actually just, because we only want it to happen on the main card, we'd actually call a method on the main card because we have a reference to it. How was assembly for me, Anime Lover? What did we do? We did 6502 assembler, I think. 68,000? No, that sounds better. 68,000. It was okay. It was okay. It wasn't too bad. You learn lots of good things when you're doing assembly and stuff like that, where you do like, bitwise operations, which actually turn out to be really useful. When did I start all my projects? Which projects are you talking about, Anime Lover? You're talking about Xamarin stuff, or when did I first get a job? When did I start my projects? I'd like to say I'm as diligent as you, Anime Lover, and I did them as soon as I got them. In reality, I mostly spent all-nighters the day before it was finished. So, but I shouldn't have. So if you can start them when you get them, that's always better. Okay, cool. So we have a bit of an idea now how we want to communicate between these two elements. Okay, so first of all, let's do the upwards animation. So we want to basically say, we've got this learn more button. Let's add a gesture recognizer to this. Let's give it a name as well. Lemons PT, starting projects near the deadline is a hardcore test of your actual skills. Yeah, I suppose. I have to admit, I pretty much only work to deadlines. Deadlines are a really good motivator for me. But yeah, I wish I didn't, because it creates a lot of stress. Okay, let's throw a gesture recognizer in here. Let's also give this a name. So we'll say xcolon name. It's like a learn more label. And in our gesture recognizers, let's say tap gesture recognizer in here. So I'm going to put this. I hate the names this gives it. You can do better, Visual Studio. So Anime Lover, data structures is that course that says, do you really want to be a programmer? It's true. The fallout rate when you have like data structures or assembly or something like that, that's where all the people who aren't really interested generally fall off. Totally agree with that. All right, so we rename that, which means back here, created a method and I changed the name of it. So let's change that. Beautiful. Now let's go and have a look at that method and work out what we're going to do. So really what we want to do here is we want to say when they tap on this, we want to go to a different state, right? So let's say we want to go to a state, and I haven't got these states at the moment. I'll add them in, but like I want to say, let's go to a state of, expanded. And that's going to be our trigger. Expanded. That's going to be our trigger to actually go somewhere. So I'm going to say, let's go to a state of like a card state of expanded. Okay. I don't have that yet, so let's go and add that in. And it just needs to be enumeration. And let's go and call this card state. I think there's a there's not a template for that. So I don't want this to be a class. I want it to just be an enum. And it's got two states, right? We're either expanded or we contract or collapsed. Okay, cool. So now we should be able to say, okay, when they Click on this, we go to card state of expanded. So I want to go to state method, create one of those. Okay, and this is where we want to trigger our animations. Sounds reasonable, huh? Okay, so first of all, let's sort of have ourselves a variable to indicate what the card state is. So we'll say this is card state, and we'll call it something appropriate like card state. And we probably want to start this off as being collapsed. Beautiful. And then we'll say, well, first of all, let's just say if our card state, this is what we called, let's call this card state. If our current card state is equal to the card state we're changing to, we really don't want to do anything, right? So let's just return back out of there. So check we're actually changing state. And then let's do this. Let's send a message at this point. Oh, my apologies. Sorry if I just hurt your ears. I was just adjusting my microphone. Okay, so let's say messaging center, right? So if you haven't played around with the messaging center in Xamarin.Forms, it's basically a way of sending a message, right? That anyone can go ahead and listen to, right? Without tightly coupling it. So I can say, hey, messaging center, let's go and send an event, right? Now, the way this works is you've got to give it the sender, right? And you really, this is a nice little trick I picked up from, look at how messaging center messed me up. So this was by Matt Sukup, one of the dev advocates at Microsoft. So this is an interesting article because it talks about the fact that you don't really want to create these hard references either between a particular class. So what you want is just like a little proxy class that sits in between it. So you can actually just sort of create yourself an empty class and use that as your sending source. So in my case, I'm going to create a new class called like card event. Okay, and actually it doesn't have to do anything, right? So we'll just have it as a class. You could, put things in there if you want, but we actually don't need to. So I'll basically just say, hey, let's go ahead and send a card event. Where are we? Here we are. Let's go and send a card event. And we'll basically say, from here, all we want to do is, what's there? So we have our sender. So our sender in this case, we're actually just going to say, let's create a new card event. Okay. And then we have a message. So let's just go and get the card state. It's a string. So we get an enum. We could just toString it. And so that will just send the message of either expanded or collapsed. We want to make sure that we update our card state after we send that message. Okay. And then this is where we want to do our animations as well. So I'll just leave this sort of blank at the moment. I'll say animate transition, create a method for that, which is going to take in a card state. Okay, cool. We'll just get rid of that super useless not implemented exception that it throws. Okay, so we won't do anything here at the moment. We'll get that that first bit where the menu sort of pops in and out. So what I can do now is I can basically say, back on my main page, okay, when we're on appearing here, let's subscribe to that message so that we are listening for that card event. So I can say messaging center dot subscribe to a card event. Okay. It's me who's subscribing. I'm listening for a particular message. Right. So in this case, I'm listening for the expanded message because it's going to be sent when they hit the learn more. It gets passed up to here, and that's when we'll know to go and move things out of the way. So we'll say I'm listening for card state dot expanded, and it's a string, unfortunately. So we'll just say to string that puppy. And what are we going to call when we receive that message? So let's just do card expand. Okay. We don't have that method yet, so let's generate that. Okay, so something like that. So when the card shoots that message, this is going to have already been subscribed to it, and it's going to do what it needs to do. Now, here's another thing you should do as well. You should unsubscribe. That's pretty important, right? So if I'm doing a message center subscribe, so let's say messaging center dot unsubscribe. I think it's basically the same. Unsubscribing from this, and basically we put that same thing in. So we say, hey, when that deactivates, I'm no longer listening for it. In reality, we probably don't need that. It's not going to create a memory leak in this situation because we only have one main page. Unsubscribing is boring. That's what Lachlan says. Yeah, unsubscribing is super boring. So Lachlan says, YOLO. Just buy more RAM. Anyway, we don't want to do that. Why buy more RAM when you can download more? Excuse me. All right, good point. All right, so what are we going to do when we're expanding? Okay, now this is important. What we want to really do here is we want to say, okay, if the card's expanding, like if we have a look at this here, when the card expands, we actually sort of change, right? So we can no longer swipe when we are expanded. Okay, so we want to say, hey, let's turn off the pan gesture that we have in our card view. So let's do that. So we'll turn off swipe interactions, right? So we could basically say something like a main card view, user interactions, or is user interactions enabled? And we'll say, hey, we don't want to do that anymore. That seems reasonable. When we collapse it, we probably want to turn that back on, I'd suggest. Okay. So in other words, when they hit that back arrow, we'll turn that back on. So let's go ahead and add an event into this back arrow here. That's our trigger to turn it off. So let's add some gesture recognizers in here. Screen a little bit here. And it's going to create me a really ridiculous name. So let's call this back arrow Lemon PT. Unsubscribe inline events. Yeah, that's not fun. That's not fun at all. Okay, so when the back arrow is tapped, let's do this. Let's say a main card view. Got user interactions enabled equals true. So re-enable swiping. Now, this is another thing as well. Normally when I write code, I don't write so many comments. I kind of just do it when I'm sort of demonstrating code. So one way I like to write code, actually, I don't know if anyone else does this, but sometimes when I write a method, I'll do something like this. I'll say, I'll actually work it out. I'll say, animate the title back in. And then I might say re-enable swiping and actually write it out in comments first of all. And then I go back in and fill it in. I don't know. That's one way I deal with it. All right. So what have we got? We've got our card expand. So when we have a card expansion happening, we want to turn off our swipe interactions. That's true. We also want to animate in our title, right? Or animate out our title. So Lachlan, yeah, you do that if something's complicated and I'm struggling to understand. Yeah, it's a great way of actually working out if you know what a method should do, which often I don't. So let's go and animate the title. And so when it expands, the title goes out, it goes up off the top, right? So we'll create ourselves a method. Sometimes I'm finding I'm enjoying putting animations in their own method more and more. So we'll say animate the title to a card state of expanded. Probably not necessary, but let's do it anyway. Generate this method. I might pull this method back up, I think. Back up here so it's in the same sort of place. So if I want to animate the title back in then, I suppose what I really want to do here then is I want to say, let's animate the title to a card state of collapsed. Right, and so therefore, card state dot collapsed. So therefore, we don't have that animation logic in different places. And then what we can do is we can, in our animate title, we can basically work out what we need to do. So what we're really doing here is we're just sort of saying, let's go and get the, it does two things when it animates out. If we look at it nice and carefully, it moves up, but also it changes opacity as it goes up over the top. So we've got two animations that we want to do. So first of all, let's work out what our translation should be. Right. So depending on the card state, so if the card state, which is this here, if we are going to a card state of expanded, okay, then we want to take that off the screen. I think it had a margin of 30. So if we take 50, that'll take it off the screen. Otherwise, we bring it into 0. So that's where the translation Y is happening. And we also want to do our opacity. So our opacity is, again, depending on our card state. So if our card state is expanded, if it's expanded, then it's transparent. So opacity of 0, otherwise it has an opacity of 1. Okay. And so let's create this animation. Okay, and the animation is basically just going to say animation, add. This will be for the entire duration. So starting at 0 of our animation, ending at 1. Okay, so in other words, for the full duration of the animation, whatever we make that. So I'm just adjusting my mic again. So we'll say, let's create a new animation. So we're creating child animations here because we want to do two things. Okay, so we got one animation which says, let's go and get our value that we get from our animation. And let's say, what do we call it? Movie header. That's our label. We want to set our translation Y equal to the value. So Dragon, would it be better to translate the label based on its margin plus its height? It would, actually. Hey, the Martin has just rated us. Thank you, the Martin. Welcome, welcome new viewers. Uh-oh, it's a raid. Nah, it's a friendly raid, I'm sure. So, Martin, what were you working on? Anything good? Or anything fun? React Native. Oh, fantastic. Oh, look, it's where React Native meets Xamarin. See, we can coexist at the same time. Not productive. Yeah, it's super hard to be productive on stream. So you'd rather chill. Fair enough. Well, welcome everyone. So for those of you who just joined, what we're doing is we are working with Xamarin.Forms, and we're trying to replicate this UI. In fact, let me show you in a video. It's a little bit easier to see. Let me play this. So we've got some cards with superheroes. We can swipe them left and right. You'd rather not add 20,000 errors to my code. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, so this is what we're working on. This is a design that we found at Dribble, and we're just sort of going through and doing it in Xamarin.Forms. Because I like to on a Friday, I like to just sort of play around with Xamarin.Forms, see what crazy things we can reproduce. So where are we sitting at? Last time we were designing the cards. Yeah, so we did the cards. We just worked on getting them to sort of come in when we click on it. So this little bit here. The bit that we're working on right now is what happens when somebody taps on this button. So we're just doing the expanding bit now. So when they tap on this, and also when they tap backwards on that back one, we're expanding and we're collapsing. So first of all, we're just going to do the expand and collapse. Then we'll worry about things like this gradient, because that's going to be special. All right, so that's where we're at. So right now we're just doing the animation. Hey, Code Stencil, thanks for the follow. And welcome. Okay. Just out of interest, Martin, do you just do React Native for mobile apps? Or do you do native stuff as well? Like Objective-C and Swift and things like that? You do everything that seems interesting. Yeah, that's a good way to go. I like it. Okay, what are we doing? We're doing an animation. We're animating out the header. So we're saying, okay, I want this animation to say, let's go and get this translation Y, set it to our value. So we're going between -50 and 0. And Dragon, was it Dragon? Said, would it be better to translate the label based on its margin plus its height? Yeah, so 50 is just some arbitrary number that I picked. And you're totally right. It would be better to apply a little bit more science to that, right? So we could say, we could do something like, well, it's going to be off the top of the screen. So the top of the screen is 0, right? So we could say 0 minus movies header, because this is where it's going to, movies header dot height. Okay, and that would put it just off the top of the screen. The problem with that is that we probably want a little bit more buffer as well. So maybe you're right. Maybe we should say movie height plus the margin. Let's do that. Let's say movies header dot margin dot top. So add those together and take them away from 0. So yeah, that's a good improvement. Martin started getting serious into programming like 4 months ago. So you're doing good. Yeah, fantastic. I think what matters is you have fun. Okay, so we're basically saying, okay, we're moving it minus the height plus the margin. Okay, that seems reasonable. Okay, so at translation Y, what do we get? We get our start value. So our start value for this was going to be basically where its current translation is, I suppose. Right, which is probably going to be 0 most of the time. And we're moving it to translation Y. Okay, which is our variable that we just set up. And what are we missing here? Missing a bracket? I think we're missing a bracket. Okay. And it's a bit hard coding on a smaller screen. So what's some good Xamarin features? Well, I suppose a bit like React Native, the big feature is that, you can write cross-platform code. With Xamarin, it's all, using all the native APIs. So it's not like a Flutter, for example, which is sort of rendering things using its own controls. It's actually using the real native controls to do things. But also you get to write in C#, which is good for me because I come from very much a C# background. So you can write everything in C#, you can access all of the APIs. It goes across a bunch of different platforms as well. So I really like it. Yeah. I think we need another bracket in there. Can I fix this? All right, I'm gonna have to move this down. So from 0 to 1, we got our at 0. Add a new animation. Got too many brackets in here. Going on. Ah, there we go. What are you complaining about? Nothing takes 5 arguments. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, cool. So, so it's basically React Native, but instead of JavaScript, you use C#. I guess, yeah. Yeah, and the thing is with Xamarin, there's a few different approaches as well. You can either do sort of traditional Xamarin, which is where you're actually using like just you have shared code for your business logic, but you actually write your UIs specifically for either iOS or Android or UWP, which gives you a lot more control. Or you can use Xamarin.Forms. So Xamarin.Forms is like an abstraction which creates a UI that then uses native controls. So I think, technically speaking, and I don't do React Native, but I think React Native is more like Xamarin.Forms. Yeah, and it's all about C#. And it's made by Microsoft, correct. Now, what's going on here? Why do I have this error here? Because I need another bracket. Oh my goodness. Seeker player is just raided. Howdy. Howdy, Seeker player. Welcome. Welcome to everyone joining. What were you doing on your stream? How's it going? It's going great. It's going great. So I was just sort of learning JavaScript. Oh man, I've got to learn JavaScript as well. Like I was always very much involved in desktop applications, and I never really got into web. And I need to learn JavaScript. And the way I knew I had to learn JavaScript is I was writing some add-ons into Adobe XD, and you have to write them in JavaScript. And I realized it was really, really tough for me because I didn't know JavaScript. So yeah, so I'll jump on some of your streams and learn some JavaScript for sure. So shout out to people who want to learn about JavaScript. Go and follow Seeker Player. What we're doing, you wouldn't watch a stream to learn. Maybe just hang out. What we're doing is we're doing this UI in Xamarin.Forms. So we're doing C#. Okay, so we've done an animation here to say, let's go and adjust the translation. The next thing we want to do is we want to adjust the opacity. So this is going to happen over the same sort of time frame. So we'll say opacity equals V. Cool. We want to adjust the opacity. We're going to start with our starting opacity more accurately, and then we want to animate it to this opacity that we have set. And then let's commit this animation. So yeah, thanks for joining, everyone. Okay, let's give this an animation name. So we'll say a title animation. How many frames? So 16 or 16 milliseconds for your frame gives you what? 60 frames a second. We'll do this over. Let's just start it. So 300 milliseconds. Okay, cool. Okay, so what do we got? We've got ourselves, when we hit the back arrow, we animate it to a collapsed state. We turn the interactions back on. That feels about right. Okay, and we should be listening to our events here as well. What else do we want to do? When we click on the back arrow, we not only want to animate that title out, we actually also want to go and tell the card view to change states as well. Right, so we can get hold of the card view by saying main card view dot current view, right, and that is going to be view, but we want to cast it to a specific type. So we'll say, hey, it's going to be a hero card. And we want to say, go to state. I'll make that a public method. So we're basically saying, when I hit that arrow, I want the card to now go to a state of collapsed. Something like that. Beautiful. So, Martin, I'd say it's more difficult to learn how to approach solving different problems than it is to learn languages. Yeah, I think that's true. Most often they do share a lot of features. I find JavaScript tough because it isn't sort of strongly typed, or at least my understanding of it is such. So I find I make lots and lots of errors. Don't pick them up until runtime. But the cool thing is that you can just sort of reload things really fast. Yeah, it's really vague. Exactly. here we're telling the card to collapse. Luminism, hi, how you doing? I thought JavaScript was stupid easy because it isn't strongly typed. Well, yeah, it is, but that just means I make heaps of typos because the compiler doesn't pick things up for me. I suppose that's why there's frameworks, right, that sort of strongly type things, is my understanding. Anyway, I need to learn JavaScript. Although I'm tempted to go and use Blazor to do web stuff. That seems really interesting. Yeah, TypeScript. Lachlan says woo for Blazor. So Lachlan's been doing some work on Blazor. All right, cool. So let's have a look at where we're here now. So we're not actually doing any animations on the card yet, right? When we sort of go to a state, because our animate transition doesn't do anything, but maybe this will be enough to animate in and out our title. Or maybe not. See, I get this, what's going on here? What did I forget? I've got a closing tag here. Matt Goldman had to switch to Angular because Blazor isn't mobile friendly. It is now, isn't it? Doesn't everything support WebAssembly now and all that sort of goodness? Oh, Lachlan, you're writing VB. Shame. Oh, that didn't work. Hang on. Click our learn more. What happened to our movies title? Oh. It's happening. It's just happening too fast. Okay, so you can see as I go back, it's coming back in. So we want to adjust that timing, I think. So it's 50 milliseconds, yeah. So, but we do want it to sort of exist outside of the cards, right? So we can swipe our cards and let's have a look at that timing. What did I set it to? $300 milliseconds. Well, that should be okay. Let's put it over 1,000. See if that makes a difference. It could well be because we're moving it up quite a bit. Well, actually, let's have a look here. Let's put a breakpoint here. I'm interested in what the height of that label is. Wow, the height of that label is 619. That looks too much. So it's actually like animating it like way off the top here. No, it's not in a grid. It'll be because, let's have a look. Yeah, here's an interesting way of debugging it, right? Let's go back. And if I go into my main page, XAML, this is how I like to sort of debug things. Rainbows, yeah. So rainbows, what Lachlan's referring to with rainbows is a nice little library called Rainbows. I don't have it in here at the moment, so I'm just going to do this. It basically does the same thing as what I'm about to do, which is say, let's go and put a background color on a control and see how big it is, right? So at the moment, that movies header is actually as high as the page, right? So when I say go and get the height minus the margin, it's like, it's It's like way up here somewhere, right? So we don't want that. We don't want that label to be so big. And so that would be our vertical options. Or say, if we say that's start instead of fill, yeah. So now it's sitting there, which makes a lot more sense. I'm not sure if it's gonna, there we go. Now it might be a bit too slow, I think. So that's over a second. See, it's there. All right, so let's get rid of that background. Yeah, change it back. So it felt like it was like less than half a second. So we'll do that. We'll change it back to 300. And we'll see what we get. There we are. That's much more reasonable. Beautiful. Okay. Sweet. Okay, let's have a look at this. Let's see how fast this actually does it. It's probably even a bit faster, right? Yeah, it's probably a little bit faster. Let's take it down to 250, which is actually the default. Like 0.2 of a second. 0.2 is 200, right? That should do it. Cool. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to do that background. Let's make that background go up and down as we expand that card. So that's going to be our animation. We set this up in our hero card, right? We have this animate transition thing here. Okay, so that animate transition is going to want to basically say, depending on our card state, right? So we're going to create an animation. And we actually have to consolidate a lot of things together. Like there's a lot of animations which go on when an expand happens. And in order to basically coordinate them, we're going to put them all into a parent animation, but we'll have different animations for different sections. Okay, so what I mean by that is we'll say, let's go and create a parent animation. Okay, and then we'll say, when it expands, and they also change the order as well. So this is why I'm doing the if statement here, because when we're expanding, the first thing that happens is the card goes up, and then the elements go up, and then it does a gradient. But when it comes back down, it's the other way around. The gradient goes, then the elements drop. Yeah, so Martin, so the parent animation will do stuff that all elements do, and the child animations will do stuff for the different elements. Yeah, pretty much, right? So the parent animation is like the container animation. You can say that animation is going to take, 2 seconds or whatever. And then inside of that, you can have a bunch of sub animations, which are saying, okay, over the first half of that animation duration, move this label to there, or move this card up, or do whatever we need to do. So it's kind of just a nice way of coordinating things. So we'll say if our card state is expanded, or we're expanding, let's do this, otherwise we'll do something else. And probably they get a little bit busy, so I'm going to create them into separate methods. So I can say like parent animation, right? And I can say add a new animation. And if I say, for example, 0, so start at 0, go to 0.1, right? And create an animation. I'll put this into a method, right? For a particular card state. Let's go and get a method out of this bad boy. Okay, cool. And we'll basically do the same going the other way. What this is really saying is when I go and commit this, am I on a laptop? Screen seems so small. No, the reason the reason it looks small, I think, is because I've got my fonts pumped up, right? So normally, you know, I might code it like this size, but you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing. So I've just got the fonts really big. Actually, it's not a laptop at all. So what I actually have here, this is my setup here. This is where OBS is. This is my widescreen here. This is what I'm coding on, but I'm only actually projecting because I'm just projecting at 1920 by 1080. I'm just actually showing this part of the screen. Sorry, you can't see that. This part of the screen here. And then I've got my Twitch stuff. For my drone over here. That's my Mac. I mostly just develop on a PC. Yeah. And my Mac is just my build host. So yeah, that's my setup. And there's my camera up there. All right. So yeah, this is just that corner. Cool. Now, what was I going to say? I was going to say that we were talking about animations. We're talking about child animations, right? So the way this works is I could say, okay, well, let's get this parent animation. Let's go and commit the animation, right? And I could say, this is like a card expand animation, right? And I can say, this is going to happen, the frame rate, 16 milliseconds. And I can say, let's make this happen over 2 seconds, right? And so the reason this is useful is because when you have child animations, like I'm adding a child animation, right, into this parent animation, this is saying take 0.1 10% of this total time, right? So if I wanted this to take 1 second, I could say, make it happen from 0 to halfway through the animation. Go and do this. So it's a really nice way of coordinating things together. Okay, card animation. Right, so in our card animation, this is where we're going to want to get some values, and we're going to basically animate where the top of the card is, right? Because at the moment the card is drawn in Skia. Where's my, what's up here, right? So this is where I'm painting the card. I'm drawing a rounded rec from the top margin to the height. Okay, so we're going to basically want to say, when I draw that card background, I'm not just going to use the top margin, I'm going to use the value that we're animating. Okay, so what that means is here we need to work out screen over here. There we go. We need to work out where the top of the card should be. Right, should be, and that's going to depend on the card state, right? So if the card state is expanded, then it's going to be at the top. If it's not, it's going to be, sorry, let's just write this out. We need to tell it where to animate from, where to animate to, right? So if we're going to an expanded state, it starts from where the card is and it goes right up to the top of the screen. If we're going the other way, it starts at the top and goes back to where the card should be. So if we say, let's go and get a start point. So if I say, if my card state equals expanded, right? So this is the state we're going to. Then we want it to be the card top margin. Okay, so this is where we're starting, right? And where we actually want to take this to is off the top of the screen a little bit further, right? Because if we have a look at this here, it's got this rounded corner at the top, but when it expands, it's actually going to be a little bit higher, right? Because it goes off the top here. So we actually want to go into a negative space. So we want to say, let's go to minus whatever our corner radius is. I'm not sure we've got a corner radius. We do. Corner radius. Let's have a look at what that value is. Okay. Now here's something that is that I should probably fix. Let's see this here. My corner radius is 60F, right? So that's 60 pixels. But do we want it to be 60 pixels? It probably depends, right, on the device. So we can actually do something like this, like what we did with the card top margin. Instead, we can say our corner radius, this would be a better way of doing it, is 30 units, device independent units, times by whatever the density of the screen is. That would be a better approach. So it can't be a read-only there anymore. Okay, that would just make the radius look the same on different devices. Okay, cool. Problem here. I need a bracket there. Cool. Where's the card going to stop? Okay, so again, we want to say if we are going to an expanded state, then the top of the card is off the top, so it's minus the corner radius. Otherwise, it's going to card top margin. So the card top margin is just the default margin up the top for when the card is collapsed. So it should probably be like card collapse margin, maybe. Okay, so let's create an animation here then. And with this animation, we're going to have a callback here. And what we want to do in this callback is we want to say, let's get a value, right? We'll call it card top animation position. This is what we're going to use in our drawing function, right? Equals the value that we're animating. Right? So we need to say something like that our value. We'll say make that equal to the value. We need to declare this variable. Let's go and do that. Okay. And we also need to tell it to redraw once that value changes. So we're going to get our card background. We're going to say invalidate that, which is basically going to say, let's go and redraw that. Okay. That's the end of that. Then where are we starting this? What values are we animating through? Well, our card animation start. Where are we animating to? Our card animation end. Do we want it easing? Probably. We want it to accelerate up and then sort of, not just be linear. So let's give it an easing. Nice default one is sign in out. Sin in out. There we are. We've got our animation. Let's return that animation. Okay, and we're returning that so that it then adds it to our parent animation, right? And we're going to add additional animations off the bottom of here. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to, when it invalidates this, take this value, and that's what we're going to use when we're drawing the card background. That kind of makes sense. So instead of just drawing it always to there, let's draw it to there. Can't go from double to a float. Okay, let's cast it to a float, I suppose. Okay, so every time this redraws, it should update that value. I feel like I should be setting this as a default. So every time a card comes in, so it changes the binding context, so it moves to another card. Let's set up initial values. We'll say that is equal to the default card top margin. Now let's give this a run. Probably not going to work. We'll find out. All right, so it's drawn it all right there. Ooh. Hey, how about that? There we are. That's all right. Okay, so it's animating that value for first try. I'm sure there's something wrong with it. There's always something wrong with it. Seems to be right. Okay, so if I'm expanded, then we turned off user interactions. Yeah, cool. So I can't swipe. Oh, hang on. Sorry. I'm getting used to my screens. It's appearing off the side of the screen. Sorry about that. Okay. So I can't swipe. But when I bring it back down, I should be able to swipe. Beautiful. Okay, and I click that button, click that button. Beautiful. Awesome. All right. So now what we have is first try. TRAU, you had faith. You probably had more faith than I had. I'm sure there's something that's broken about it. All right. So, what to now? I suppose once we get that animation going up, let's have a look here. Yeah, so why Bad Dragon? If you're having trouble with the positioning of the window, you could probably set up your visor window as a source in OBS. Yeah, absolutely. I was actually sort of playing around with that, having a scene which is just capturing the output of this window. Yeah, so that way I don't have to keep moving it around and forgetting that I'm like throwing it off the side of the screen here. Or doing that, which has basically just minimized everything. Hang on a second. Now I can't see what's going on. The old waggle. Cool. All right, let's have a look at. I think it's probably a good idea, Dragon. Shakes and minimize. Yeah. Yeah, I actually, you've got a good point there. I think, Dragon, I never use it to minimize windows. I only ever screw up with it. Hey, we're going to follow. Rational Kuma. Thank you for the follow and welcome. Okay, what's next? Jingle. Did you not hear the jingle? All right, here's the jingle.
Today we're gonna code lots with Mr. Kim Phil Potson. Oh, how amazing you'll be.
The jingle's for you, Rational Kuma. Did you hear that one? Good. Okay, cool. Now I've been going for about an hour and a half. I need a quick bio break. So at the risk of people signing off, hopefully you won't, I'm just gonna take 5. So you should as well. Take 5 minutes, go grab a stretch. And then when we come back, we'll go and we'll start animating these elements and we'll do the gradient as well. So you definitely want to hang around. It's going to be super exciting. We're going to make heaps of mistakes. All right, let me put a timer on for 5 minutes and I'll see you back in just a moment. If you leave, you get banned. And we're back. Gotta just check I turned my microphone on. Yep. All right, we're good. How many people? Yeah, we lost a few viewers. Got blocked as a spam bot, really? Was that the countdown? Awesome. All right, so wrecked. Totally wrecked. All right, let's move this dude. Let's get this guy going up the screen. Okay, so all we really need to do is we just need to keep adding animations into here, right? So I suppose the next one is going to be just moving this dude. So we'll add another animation. Say create image animation. How about that? Let's go and implement that method. All right, method. And let's just put that down here as well. Work out the timings a little bit later on. So with our image animation, kind of all we're really doing is we're just moving the location of it. So now we can probably do this without a method, but well, let's just do it anyway. Let's sort of basically copy this code here. It'll look pretty similar. Call this image animation start. Image animation end. So what do we want to do? We want to say if we're going to expand, then we want to start at its current margin. Oh, sorry, its current translation, which if we have a look at that, I think is 50. Yep, so it's got a translation Y of 50 going on. So we want to go from 50 and we want to move it to the top of the screen. So it's going to go to 0 and vice versa, going the other way. So we'll say, let's start it at 50. Let's take it to 0. And we want, that's where it's starting. Sorry, if it's expanding, maybe I should change that. We're going from 50. If we are not expanding, we're going from the top and we're coming back down. So the end for expanding is 0. The end for this is 50. So maybe we should actually follow Dragon's good advice earlier on, really, shouldn't we? We should say, instead of just making this an arbitrary 50, maybe we should actually say hero image from starts at its current translation and then goes to 0. Actually, that's going to we're going to have to specify that value there, aren't we? Yeah, okay. That'll be fine. Okay, let's rename this to image animation. And all we really want to do here is we just want to say, let's go and adjust our hero image translation Y and equal that value. And you probably want a different easing here, I think, right? Because the hero image goes up and then it overshoots and then it comes back down. So that is a spring out animation. Or spring out easing, more accurately. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Let's have a look at when this happens, because we want to adjust these timings, because it's not going to happen at the same speed probably. So user clicks on it. Oh no, it's pretty much the same speed, isn't it? I'd say the timing ends a little bit later, starts about the same time. Okay, let's try that. So starts at about the same time, takes a little bit longer. So let's maybe make it 0.5. Be a little bit long. That's half the animation. And then when it's coming back down, let's just leave that for the moment. That'll be probably wrong. But I think the card comes down first. Let's have a look. Yeah. So the transition happens. Oh no, the image comes down first and then the card. I don't know. Let's just throw in some values, I suppose. And we'll see what happens. So we'll say 0.2. I'm going to make these line up. This one here, I don't know. We'll have to play around with these values and see what makes sense. Add zeros in here so they all line up. Let's see what we get. So once we get that that image animation, this will be too long. That'll be a second. That's 2 seconds for the full animation. And this is saying it's going to take 1 second. It'll be too slow, I think. Yeah, that timing's wrong, isn't it? Ah, thank you, Dragon. I missed these zeros here. Cool. Okay, let's see if we can work out what's going on here. That's probably all right. That one's fine. That movies wants to come in later. This is where you can waste heaps and heaps of time trying to get these values right. Let's ignore movies for a moment. Probably it's okay, actually. I think we just need to adjust that movies one. So if we put that over a second, start this one. It doesn't look like it had a spring on the way back. Yeah, cool. Put this in here. 2, 2. Let's make these line up as well. So much easier when you can see the values lined up next to each other. Cool. So what were you saying there is didn't have a spring on the way down, didn't it? This is why UI code takes so long. It's because you're just like twiddling little values. That needs to delay much more, doesn't it? Okay, so it gets a little spring on the way in. That's right, it all happens pretty quick. So what's cool right now is you could actually slow down the animations and keep them all sort of choreographed by just adjusting the time. Now, I'm going to adjust this value because it annoys me. So that needs to animate out faster. It needs to come in a little bit later. Hang on. So let's see if I can get this right. It's to leave earlier. And we may very well need different values. We will. Save card state is expanded. So when it's leaving, it wants to leave a little bit. That's probably about right. But it wants to come in. It wants to come in much slower. So it'll start at like 0.9 maybe. 1. 0.75 maybe. Anyway, let's not worry too much about these because they're all going to be wrong actually a little bit later on when we add these other elements in. Cool. So let's pull that out of the way. Let's animate up the text. And when we animate up the text, let's see where it fits in. That goes up. Just before that finishes, it starts animating that text up. It turns out that these two here, the hero name and the real name, are animating at different speeds. Well, not different speeds, different times. So Iron Man starts first, then eventually they stop around about the same time. Do another animation method. We're going to have two of these. We're going to have one for the hero name. Spell name correctly. Timing's going to be wrong. Okay, so the hero name animation, it's just going to be taking that up by the same amount that we did this one here, right, which is 50. I'm going to put 50 in here. let's copy this. I think I should be able to refactor this a little bit later on. So when it's expanding, we actually want to move this one up because this doesn't have a translation on it. Okay. 0 nanum. So when it's expanding, it's going to start at 0. It's going to go to -50. Sorry. It's going to start at 0. It's going to go to -50. Otherwise, it's going to go to 0. We are applying this to our hero name label. Have a hero name label. We haven't got a name on this yet. Add one onto our real name as well. Yeah. Let's adjust that microphone. Hero name label translation equals that value. It's probably got the same springing, so it's pretty much the same. I wonder if we can have just a general method to do the animations. Who knows? Okay, let's do the real name as well at the same time. Yeah, copying a lot of code here. That's a bad sign, isn't it? It's a very bad sign. Because this one is gonna basically take the same values, isn't it? Yeah, pretty much gonna be the same, except we're just doing a real name label. Okay, I can see we can already refactor some of this code. Right. Let's have a look at the timings, see if we can get those timings right. So, image goes up. Just before it finishes, this one starts, just after this one starts. And they finish at the same time. So what does that tell us? If we're expanding, what do we say? It starts at the same time? No, it starts slightly after. Sorry, I'm getting confused. Okay. Let's put this at 0.115. We'll finish it at the same time. Seems reasonable. And then coming back in, these are all going to be wrong. Just back in. They all start at the same time. And the image finishes after they finish. I wonder if there's a better way of doing this. Anyway. Finishes slightly before. I don't know. Let's try. It's hard to visualize. Just the numbers. Do 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 do. That's all right. Oh. Okay. Exception. What do we do? Ooh. Right. It'd be nice if your video play showed milliseconds instead of just seconds. Yeah. You know what we could do? We could bring it into a video editor. Let's try this. Let's try going with, what have I got? Camtasia installed. See if this is a good way of working it out. Go Camtasia. Bring that video in. I'm on a timeline here. That's showing. Probably showing seconds. We could do this, right? We could say, split the video there. Get rid of that marker. I don't know if this is useful or not, because now we could say, that's the end of that animation. So I think you can zoom in on the video timeline. I think I'm as zoomed in as I can be. What we could do is we could always, let's try this. Could we video effects? What would happen if we just got that and said, we adjust how long it takes? I don't know if this is useful. Like if we said this was 10 times, no, not 10 times. We said, for example, wait on, let's try this. We said we make this one So instead of 1 times, let's make it like point. I don't know if this works. 0.5 times. Now we can divide by 2. Now I've got to do more maths. Yeah, I'm not sure this is helping me. Anyway, I'll leave this here because then I can play around with this. So what did we find? Oh, we had an exception. Hey, there's a follow. Drawn to code. Thank you so much. Welcome. Thank you very much for the follow. Oh, wait on. You didn't hear the jingle because I haven't fixed my audio yet.
Today we're gonna code lots with Mr. Kim, Phil Potts, and oh, how amazing you'll be.
All right, we'll have to work on those timings. But let's not do that now. What I really want to, because I could spend all day looking at that. And in fact, you know what I suspect? One of the things that disappoints me about Xamarin.Forms is the easings. I find the easings are rarely what I'm after. So I think we'll add some custom easings into this because it's not quite right. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What we want to do, let's just do the next bit. Let's make that fade out. Yeah, maths. Man, I suck at maths. That wants to fade out. Let's see what our friend Camtasia tells us. Okay, no more is going to just like slide off there and go opaque. So transparent. And then on the way back, it's going to do the opposite. Slide back in. Beautiful. All right, let's make that happen. Because then I can work on the bit that I actually want to work on, which is the gradient. All right, let's do one more of these. So the gradient I think is going to be okay. That's famous last words. All this one is going to do is pretty much the same thing. All this learn more. Patient start. One thing I generally do while I code is I don't worry too much about making it perfect because I'm always going to come back and refactor it. So once I know what I'm kind of doing, then I'll do it. Okay, so what we want is we want the learn more to slide off to the right and also adjust its opacity. So it's kind of two animations, but they're related. Let's see what happens if we said, okay, well, let's make it go start at 0 when it's expanding, or it's coming from 100. What if we said, which it doesn't have a name, let me give it a name. Oh no, we do have a name, there we go. Learn more, translation X. I'm going to go to V, so it's going to go across. What would happen if we just said its opacity is as a percentage, right? So we could say like, it goes from 0 to 1, so we'll just divide it by 100. I don't know. Otherwise, we have to create 2 animations. This is probably smoother animation. And when does it happen? I need to work out a better way of doing these timings. Okay. It starts when the image starts moving, and it's done halfway between there. So in other words, it's when it's going expanding. It's happening at the same time there, and it's finishing before. It happens pretty fast. And then when it comes back in, everything's back in its place almost. So just before it does just before that's finished, yeah, about halfway as well. There we go. So let's try this. What did I say? Did I say it finishes? And it happens just before that ends. How long was that? 0.25. 5. All right, let's just see what happens there. Where is it? Okay. Too bad. Let's bring it over to Tony Stark. About right. All right, we'll play with that timing later on. Let's, because I'm gonna have to go pretty shortly. Let's do this gradient. Looks pretty good. I think the timings. I'm gonna work out a way, whether it's through Camtasia, of actually being a bit more scientific about this, so as I can keyframe particular sections and I can actually see when each of these animations starts and ends. I'll do that later on. All right, but for now, let's talk gradients. Okay, so what happens with the gradient? Get out of the way. Okay, so once this has gone up, we then have a gradient that comes up to white. These things animate at the same time, but that's cool. We'll do that in a different animation. So I basically want to, so what I'm thinking is I'm thinking there's a band here where we're transitioning. So what if when we're animating that background, we essentially just have a rectangle. I don't know if my pen's going to work here. Is my pen going to work? Can you see that? I think it works. Okay. What about if we had a rectangle like this, right? And that's where we're going between the hero color, which is the color up here, and white down here. So there's a gradient between those two colors. And we just move that gradient up the screen. And then, so we actually break this rendering into 3 sections, right? There's the top section, hero color. There's a gradient. And then there's the white color. And we actually just animate the rectangles of these like up or down. I have no idea if this will work. That's the way I think we can do it. And with a gradient, we can do that with a shader inside of SkiaSharp. Right. So obviously we need another method. So Dragon, you noticed that as well. I've kind of been ignoring that. So what Dragon just said is, yeah, see this text? There's this gradient going on in this text. Now I suspect what that's gonna mean is we're gonna have to, I don't know if we're gonna get away with this with a Xamarin.Forms control, like a Xamarin.Forms label. I suspect we're gonna have to render this text here in SkiaSharp so that we can get that gradient rectangle and apply it to this text. I don't know. SkiaSharp clipping. Yeah, but in order to do that, we would need to actually render this in SkiaSharp. Yeah, so let's... You ever code yourself into a corner, have to start from scratch? Yeah, sometimes. Like I actually did that before this stream, because I was kind of thinking to myself, because I kind of know what I'm going to do in a stream, and so I say, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And in the previous, like where I left off the previous solution, the background was just a box view, right? But then it occurred to me, I can't do a gradient on a box view. So I had to change that to a Skia canvas. So yeah, sometimes absolutely, TRAU. Yeah, code myself in the corner. Don't normally have to start from scratch, but sometimes you just got to change your approach. For sure. Okay, so this wants to be a gradient animation. Lachlan, I just pushed a commit with the message, some progress, but it's not really working. I wonder if this is worth it. Now I'm jumping back to where I was a week ago. Fair enough. Yeah, it happens a lot. Let's put that gradient in here. Let's go and implement that method. Okay, so the gradient, all I really need to do here is, like most of this will be done in the rendering. So I think we just need to animate that value, right? So that the transition Y value, either up or down. Okay, so we're gonna have a starting point and an ending point.
They talk about another kind of word.
Okay, we need to, it's gonna be different depending on which way we're going. So we'll say if our card state equals expanded, so we're going to expanded. So we're gonna animate this value. We need a value. So let's call it like, let's put it up here because it needs to be accessed from our drawing method. So let's call it like gradient transition Y. Float, because that's what it actually needs to be.
They talk about another kind of word.
Method here. Okay. So let's say that value, when we're expanding, it's got to come from the bottom. Kios Dev, wonder if you can animate a gradient with a pancake view. Actually, you know what? I tried that once, and I got a memory leak. Yeah, look, which I've got to fix. So have a look at this. What's Steven's thing? I added an issue. Yeah. So I was doing a gradient, and what I noticed that there's, I was animating a gradient actually. And what I noticed is that, yeah, there was a memory leak for bitmaps. So yeah, I set that up. I'm actually going to, I put myself down to resolve that. So I'll actually work that out. Which is interesting, right? There's two issues with using the pancake view, which I want to fix. One of them is that the gradient stops don't do notifies, which means if you change them, you know, if I go and change it here, that doesn't work. If I reset the collection, then it works. So there was that issue. And then there was the issue of there's just a crap ton of bitmaps. So yeah, as Steven said, might be stretching the pancake too far. But ideally, we should be able to. Yeah, I agree. Okay. So what we want to do here, going back to our thinking, is when we do the gradient transition, when we're expanding, we want the gradient to start at the bottom of the screen. All right. So that is the card background, the canvas size, because this is all in Skia. So the height of the canvas. So it's going to be, we're setting its initial value there, right? And that's where our start value is going to be. It's going to be that, right? And our ending value, we want it to go up to the top of the screen, right? And we want it to go a little bit further than the top because remember we offset a little bit so as we didn't have the rounded corners at the top. So it wants to be minus the needs to be, the gradient needs to make it all the way off the top of the screen. Stuffed with pancakes. You've been there. We need to set up a value here. Let's just do this for the moment. Let's say our transition or our gradient height. So we want our gradient height to be, I don't know, 200. We'll adjust that later on. So we want it to go all the way off the top of the screen. So we have to go, our end is minus that gradient height off the top of the screen. If we're coming back the other way, we're just sort of reversing that, right? So we're saying we're starting at minus gradient height. And so it's bringing in from up the top, and then it's coming back down to, because the white goes across the entire screen. So it's going to start there, and it's going to go through to the height. Not minus, positive. That should give us our values. So then let's create an animation. So just adjust my microphone here. So we're going to create an animation, and I hate formatting this on a small screen. So our animation, first thing is we've got our callback. So our callback is basically going to say, let's go and get the value, and let's set our transition, right? So this is the rectangle of that gradient. Equal to our value. I have no idea whether I'm losing precision when I cast these between floats and doubles. I haven't thought about it that much. And what we also want to do is when we adjust that gradient position, we want to tell it to redraw it. Okay, cool. What's next? Our starting point and our ending point. So we want to start at our start. We want to end at our end. So those values that we've already determined. Is it linear? Pretty linear. What would you say? Let's go with linear. We'll see what it looks like. Oh, that's terribly formatted. Okay. And then we'll return the gradient. Animation. Cool. So now what we need to do is we need to modify our drawing method, wherever the hell that is. Yeah. And we need to say, so draw the card background. So this is where we get the hero color and we apply that. Okay, so this is now draw the top part of the card. For the card. And so our 3 steps are going to be then like draw the gradient. And then our last thing is draw up the screen. Draw the white bit. Right. So draw the white bit at the end. So the key thing here is the gradient is going to be the rectangle that's moving up the screen. Right. So let's say we create ourselves a gradient rectangle. Hey, Princess Tiffany. Thank you for the follow. Welcome. You've just caught us as I'm trying to work out how to apply this gradient up the screen. But thank you so much. Okay. So is there a reason you can't use one object to do the gradient because you can't tell the gradient where to start on an object? You can, right? So you can tell it where to start on. So normally what you do is you there's a method, right? Hang on a second. There's a method where you go and you get a paint object, right? And you apply a shader to it. And the shader, because there's an SK shader dot create linear gradient, right? And that basically says, I want a gradient between this point and this point, which in our case would be our rectangle, and then what colors and what positions it's in, right? And so my theory is that you can just kind of have these 3 rectangles that move up the screen. Solo Techno, welcome. Thank you for the follow. Well, look, we've got the follower train. I forgot about the follower train. So down there, that's the follower train. So we've got 2 followers, and that's going to count down. And that's supposed to be some like way of getting more people to follow you. All right. Let's try this. Let's try this approach first. And this could well be one of those things where we work out it's just the wrong approach. So if I create a gradient rectangle, which is an SK rect, right? And it's going to go from 0, and it goes from that Y position that we're animating, right? Which was our gradient transition Y. So that's where it starts. It goes to the width of the screen, and the height of it, or the bottom of it, is the gradient transition Y plus the height of the gradient. Okay, so let me split that over a couple of lines here. Right, so that's a rectangle of our gradient. We would want to create a paint object here. And probably, actually, we probably don't really want to create it here. We probably should create it when we start off. Anyway, let's say this is going to be a fill. I've done something similar to this before. Okay, paint. All right. And then what we do is we apply that shader that I was talking about, right? So you say gradient paint dot shader equals sk shader dot create linear gradient. So I want a linear gradient created. And it's got a bunch of parameters. So the first parameter is the starting point. So this is a new SK point. So it's going from 0 to a gradient transition Y. Is right? I don't know. Find out. It's ending at this value here. What's next? What do we need next? Next, we need an array of colors. So in our case, that is going to be and we've got colors. It's going to be a new SK color array with the values. We have a hero color, here. So the starting color is going to be from the hero color. And it's going to go through to white. I'm assuming they're all going to go to white. Why didn't you like that? Right. Cool. Okay, what's next? The next thing it needs the color positions. So in our case, that's going to be pretty easy, I think, right? What's it called? Color pos. Because it's going to be, what's an array of floats? We're going from 0, right? Which is where a hero color starts. And then we're going to white at 1. And then it's got a tile mode. So I don't think we want to tile it, but what we want to do is we want to restrict it. Let's go shader tile mode. Let's have a look at the values. Clamp, mirror, repeat. We don't want to repeat it or mirror it. I think clamp is the default anyway. Oops. Okay, so what have we done here? We've created a paint object. We should probably do something with that. We created a shader, which is our gradient. We now go and we just draw that rectangle, which has a shader for the paint object. Okay, gradient rect. Okay, gradient paint. Okay. And then the white bit down the bottom, right, is a rect. And it goes from 0, the bottom of this, so the ending point of this, to the full width. Is on another line, info.width, and the bottom of it is going to be the height. It's going to be the full height, right? Because it goes down to info.height, goes down to the bottom. And then we say, draw that rect. With paint object, which has a color of white. Wow. Okay. Draw the gradient. Wait on. This is like work out where the gradient needs to be. This is actually creating the gradient. And this is drawing the gradient. So in this case, right, this is drawing the top hero color. Okay, so if we reduce the font size here so I can see it all. So if we think about what this is doing, drawing the top color, drawing the gradient wherever it needs to be, that bit's animating up and down. So this is drawing over top. So it probably doesn't matter that this actually, so technically speaking, I think what we're trying to do here is, let's say this is our screen. It starts off just drawing the entire hero color over like that. Then it works out where the gradient rectangle needs to be. So let's say it's here at this point, draws a gradient, and then anything underneath here, it just paints white. So it's probably not as efficient as it should be. But it probably doesn't matter. Now, the thing that we want to... Oh, what am I using to draw on the screen? It's a little tool called... Zoom it. Let me see where my browser windows are. It's like the oldest app in the world. This is it here. And it's just like literally it's just an exe. You just drop it somewhere, and allows you to to draw, change colors. You can zoom in and zoom out, which is terrifying. It also allows you to draw text as well. Hello, dragon. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. So it's what I use when I was teaching at Xamarin University quite a lot. When I'm walking through code, I'll go, yeah, this is crap. Of course, I wouldn't really say that, but you could say, hey, this is crap. Anyway, sometimes it helps me, right? Because I can, like what we're doing here. Sometimes I will literally, as I'm coding, draw stuff out or use a pad to draw it and yada yada yada. Okay, so this is cool, except, and I think this is basically right, except what's going to happen is this value is going to be 0. So we need that to basically start off being off the screen, so it doesn't actually render. When we change our context here, we set these up. This is where I should probably set up my paint object. Right? So I could probably, let's just try what happens here. Just get a max value, right? So just give it a ridiculously big value. Let's I need to see it running. Like you say, you need to be able to visualize it. So let's work out the timings for this and then just watch what disaster we have. So in the expand animation, everything's finished. And then it happens over about half a second. After everything's finished, so it's going to start at 0.5. Takes about half a second. So in our case, it's not 500, it's 250.75. Feels about right. What about when we're contracting? When we're contracting, it's blah, 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 all this happens. Person hits that. It's the first thing to happen. It goes down. Let's assume it takes the same amount of time, and then everything starts. So we've said if this goes at 0, this would then go for, how long did it take before? 0.25. Actually, you know what I need? I need an override or a different constructor for this that has the time it starts and the duration as opposed to the end time. Because what I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to have to say add 0.5 to all of this. You know what I mean? That would be a cool. I don't know. Did all that while I was running. Draw a rect. Yep. Yeah. I got an error. It was well appreciated. Here are you. I mean, the compiler got it for me, but it was good that you got it too. You can be the human compiler. Ooh. You have troubles. That doesn't look too bad. Hey, person not sure. Good to see you. Good to see you too. It's always weird saying good to see you. I mean, I can't see you. You've been lurking. I need to add a lurk command. Okay, what's going on here? You can see why why that transitions. Because we just lose it. All right. Well, that's a good start. That's a good start. It possibly takes too long, doesn't it? I just heard my wife come back. I think I'm gonna have to sign off shortly. Let's have a look how long this takes. That's amazing for sure. Well, I've done something like this before where I had to animate a gradient, which is why I knew that Pancake View wasn't going to work, because I tried it with Pancake View and it didn't work. I think there's an optimization we could do here actually, because if you have a look, let's see whether that's right. If you have a look here, this shader, right? This shader, I suspect I can do this much easier. Theoretically, if like this shader that I apply to a paint, I can tell it where the linear gradient starts and ends. So probably I don't even have to draw this rectangle. Probably I can just use the one rectangle and then just create this shader and then apply that to it. So I think that would be a possibility. We'll have a look at that. We'll optimize it. Has this one been the most complicated out of the UI challenges? It's surprisingly complicated. Let's have a look here. Let's find out. Let's see what other ones I did. Marvel cards, this is the one we're working on. Mountain Mobile. Did you see Mountain Mobile? That one was pretty complex. Might even be on here. So this one was kind of complex because it had, that transition there. There was a lot going on in that animation. And then that as well. Look, I think realistically, if this if Andre hadn't done such an awesome job on this card and I had to implement that myself, then it's probably going to be harder, because he does all kinds of stuff like virtualizing those cards in the background. Yeah. All right. I'm going to do a really cheeky hack here. You want to see a really cheeky hack? How we'll get that text color. This is not going to be right, by the way, but I think I'm going to have to change all of the text to be rendered in SkiaSharp, or at least the ones that the name and the real name. But what we could do, just to test out the effect, if you like, where's our gradient animation? We could actually just sort of say, let's go and add finish on this. Yeah, change the text color at the end of the animation, and it's not going to be right because it's gonna look rubbish. But at the moment it'll probably do. Is it all finished? Yeah. So we could just say let's get a font color, right? And depending on our card state, so we'll say our card state, if that equals expanded, then the color wants to be black, right? An if statement. Otherwise, the color wants to be white. And then, oops. Oh, this is a method, isn't it? And then we could just like, yeah, hero name label. Equals the font color. And the real name label equals font color as well. Oh, dot color. Probably. So theoretically, it'll just, there'll be no, and it will actually not look quite right either, because the transition will go all the way to the top, for example, and then it will flip colors. If it happened fast enough, you might not notice it, but I think we'll notice it. Yeah, you notice it. I mean, but it's okay at the moment. It's particularly noticeable when it goes to white. All right. Now I'm gonna have to. It's 1 in the afternoon for me. I've got to go and do my real job. Yeah, just about 1. So I'm going to go and do my real job, but let's think about what we want to do next time, because I'd like to finish this off. We've got the basics there, and what I should do is let's check this puppy in. Look at that, all of that code. Yeah, this should be broken down. We'll refactor it. Code at end of stream show, and we'll do one more stream on it, and we'll fix up everything else. Something. I feel bad. I do Git through Visual Studio. I use an IDE. I feel like I should use a command line to be a real man. Anyway, before we finish off, let's see. You also did Git through. Yes. Yeah. You know how I feel then, Dragon. Okay. Excuse me. So we got some timings to sort out. I might just play with those because it's really boring for you to watch me just change values. So I might see if I can get some of those timings done for next stream. But then we'll work on, we've got the transition. We got to get all of these bits in. So this is what I want to know. What do you think should happen with this bottom section here? Right? Because clearly on my device, for example, right? Oh, actually, let's try running it on an iPhone and see what happens. I have no idea. We haven't run this on an iPhone at all. This is a test of Xamarin.Forms, right? We'll run on a first it doesn't run. Just start it again. An XS. Is an XS a long device? No, we'll find out in a second. Whoa. Does anyone else get this in their simulators, by the way? You see how... See how it's got all this stuff up the top here in the window bit? And I also get this. But if I just continue on, it's like happy as Larry. Yeah, that noise at the top. And it just makes me think that there is a it just makes me think that there's a memory leak somewhere. Because look, it's actually taking parts of this screen and rendering it up here. Hello? Hello? It's pretty weird. Might have to look at the iOS one. Just so we're clean. Anyway, while we're waiting for that, the question that I have is, what do you think should happen in this bottom section down here? Because on a long device, it kind of looks all right, but on a stubby little Android phone, yeah, it's not right. So Dragon, you think everything under the horizontal bar would scroll. So everything under this point here. So this would be a scrolly. Oh. Get out of the way. I think it's got that. For some reason, it doesn't seem to be working, does it? We might have to have a bigger clickable area on that. Safe area insets. Yeah, I think we need to get rid of this. Like if we want to be technically correct to the design, we'll do this. We'll get rid of the title bar. Although Iron Man might not like his head being cut off. That's the problem when you get a design like this, it doesn't deal with that. Anyway, back to Dragon. What you're saying. So there would be a grid of images down the bottom here. Use a grid that just expands off the page and becomes visible as you scroll. Possibly scale the image a bit and transition everything up slightly if you need more viewing room. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, what you could do, I don't know how possible this is, but this is sort of taking it beyond this. You could do something like as you scroll up, this bit of text here goes up to here. Let me try that again. This bit of text here comes up to here. This image shrinks down to here as you scroll it up, and then all of this content down here sort of would come up and fill up that part of the screen. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. We probably shouldn't get too carried away with it. But yeah, maybe if there's just a scroll view beneath here, and we can scroll through that. Anyway, I'll have a think about that. If anyone thinks of a good way of doing it, let me know. And we also need to, hang on, let me get this out of the way. Right. What's up? Let's see where we're at. When swiping made the card inset, we did that. We did the expand animation, kind of. Yeah, okay, we'll leave that one for the moment. Text gradients, expand details, allow details to scroll. Check iOS version. I have a bug or two. All right. Fantastic. Well, thanks, SkiaSharp. Let's, before we finish off, let's just make sure that we thank everyone for joining us. So thanks, SkiaSharp. Of course, thanks, Dragon and President Not Sure, for joining in. Lachlan, of course. TRAU, awesome compiler work. And the Martin, I'm not sure how many of you guys are on anymore, but a few follows. Solo Techno. It says Tiffany, Drawn to Code, Rational Kuma, Seek Player, Code Stencil, a Martin. Okay, so lots of good follows there. Let's see if there's a good place to raid. If you want to know where some good streams are, I always have a look at bellyio.programming. Does anyone know a good place to raid? Deploy day. Building a Threadripper machine. Anyone want to see a machine be built? Actually, Seeker Player is streaming. He was on here before. Let's go and what do you think? Should we go and raid Seeker Player? Seems fair. Let me do that. If I can work out how to do it, I need to get better at Twitch. Okay, so come on, let's go and Seeker Player. Let's go and raid. Say hi. Ready to raid soon. And of course, thank you very much for joining us. I'll be back here next Friday. And we'll go ahead and we'll finish this bad boy off. Also, if you have any designs you think would be fun for us to try and battle through, just hit me up on Twitter, and we'll have a look at them. All right, but otherwise, let's go and raid. Thanks a lot, see you next time. Make sure you say hi.